this talk is going to be about. I am a tools person. I mean, if you ask me, it's a tools person, typically in terms of making software engineering tools. At Wipro, being one of the big organizations which is into software development, one of the fundamental things that we use as developers are software engineering tools. Now, with open source, it's like a big game changer in the tools development space. If you ask me today, software has got a specific meaning. I mean, it's very different from any other industry. Let's take a look at what software is. I mean, software is something which you can just think in one corner, and you just think about it, it suddenly translates into some sort of an artifact. I mean, you don't do much. I mean, you just think about it, you can sit in your own cozy, comfortable zone, you can start coding, and it becomes an asset, it becomes an IP. It's very different from the rest of the world if you look at it from that way, and yet very similar. If you look at the construction industry, what goes into the construction industry to make these houses? You look at the natural resources which go into it. You can look at, say, the building construction, you need sand. If you look at automotives, you need raw material, you need metal, right? All these are like resources. All these resources go into actually making whatever you call it, either a house or a car. Similarly, what goes into making of software is typically intangible stuff. It's not something that you can actually hold into your hand, right? But yet it is very different. Why is it so different? It's different because it's infinite. If you look tomorrow you might actually find you don't have enough iron ore to actually make cars. You probably may not have enough sand to construct houses, but it's possible that you can still continue to go on making software. Because software can be created by just sitting in one corner, thinking about it. Yes, you can actually make more stuff. So you're dealing with a different and a unique kind of problem. You're dealing with a problem of having too much. You're having too much of information. You're having too much of material to actually make more things. Now, if you look at software, the challenge is not about getting the right kind of thing. The challenge is about harnessing it. I have got these assets, I have got these specific people who can develop. How do I actually harness it? How do I actually translate into something which is useful to me, useful to the world? Now this is where you come to the very basic question of, let's start thinking about it as services, let's start thinking about it as products. Let's say, okay, I'm going to offer it as a service. Today, the world is shrinking. In terms of service offerings and product offerings, there's hardly any divide. You will see product companies are getting into services, services companies are getting into products. It's because you need a combination of all this. You can't just say, I'm a product company and I offer no services, nor can you just get into services and say, I'm going to offer, products. Just products, just developing, it's a combination of everything. Now, software inherently had this debate which was going on, which said, is it an art, or is it something which is that you build in terms of production? Can I just make 100 copies of the software? Is it something like that? This is another debate which you can actually say. But all this is with respect to the styles of programming, and still the person who remains constant in that is we as the developers, the people who actually develop software. That's pretty much common. People talk about making software to various industries. You can make software for insurance, you can make software for automotive, you can make software for different kind of businesses. But then something is there. Like if you look at this, shoemakers' children are running barefoot. What does this mean? Who makes the software for software developers? How much of software development, when I look at it, are like automated, having the best of the breed of tool? I still find people go back to their notepad and then type in something and say, look, this is how I'm going to start developing. When you look at the real gist, in terms of tools available for software developers, there are like lots of them, but the developer is still very specific. He wants to use the tools that he is comfortable, or whatever the person is comfortable with. It's not very often that you find like this is the tool that you should be using for doing your software development. Now, having said this, there is no dearth of tools available in the open space. There are lots of tools. Now, how do you pick which are the tools which will actually deliver what it takes for me to deliver something which is extremely, I mean, probably you would not say like good in terms of various parameters is what I would say now. Okay, so let me just go further. I need tools. Now tools, there are various driving factors for tools. I can purchase a tool and then get people trained on the tool. That would say, it is tool centric, I've decided. I would say I need tools which are like going to do A, B or C. It can be for requirements, I need tools for design, I need tools for code generation, I need tools for refactoring. I could say that. But end of the day, what it matters is it actually satisfying your need? Is it satisfying why you're using this tool? Is it actually satisfying that? That is the most important thing. So the drivers for tooling typically are need driven, then to improve the developer's productivity. I have 2 people working on my team. Can I get these 2 people to work like 200 people? Is it possible? That's where the tools kick in. Then I talk about automation. I'm doing a particular thing, I'm doing it over and over again. Is it possible that I can actually save time? These are other areas where I need tools. The other area that I would say is reuse, which is I build it once, I see different applications of it. So there's a continuous process of identify, harvest and then publish it back to others so that people can start using it. So this is exactly one of the 4 drivers, and the ideal thing that you would want in when you actually get onto any kind of software development is you would want to have the right team, you would want to have the right design, you would want to have the right execution, the tool set, and all together at the same time. So that's where it has to be at the right time, at the right thing, when you want all these things together. So now I would broadly classify tooling into like 4 broad areas. One is with respect to infrastructure, the other one is with respect to the development environment, then it is with the software engineering tools. When I say software engineering tools, it means the entire stack, like you could say coding, testing, design, your entire SDLC phases that you could actually think of. And then project management tools, tools which are used for running projects. So now having said this, I'm going to put together something where I say, before you look at this slide, I'm going to tell this slide is with respect to a tool maker, a person who's trying to satisfy, the needs of somebody who wants to pick and choose a tool. So look at the 5 parameters that you're looking at, the execution method, the nature of work. These are some of the parameters based on which you could decide what tool is required for your project. Okay, now the thing is like at a developer level, I could actually do an extreme programming and approach. I could actually be somebody who is actually having a team which is practicing XP. I could also have a team which is pretty much doing a regular phase-based development. I could have a development which is like I'm doing requirements, then design, then coding, then unit testing and so on. This is up to again the specific unit into which you are working on. You could also look at the the project managerial styles, like it could be agile, it could be Kanban, it could be waterfall. Then the thing that is actually coming on, that is when we look at developer operations. When I say developer operations, what it means is you're merging the 2 areas, that is of development and the operations. Operations is when it actually goes into production. Okay, so that is something that happens at the enterprise level. So all these things would decide the kind of tools that you would be using when you're actually doing your work. And no 2 places are same. Every person is like unique in terms of their area, their specific expertise, things what they could possibly do. Now let's look at languages. There could be languages which are domain specific, there could be languages which are generic, there could be languages which are dynamic, there could be languages which are structured. Now an example of a dynamic language is like, say, you look at JavaScripting, something like Ruby, something like Groovy. These are languages which can actually scale and at the same time These are languages which brings in enormous amount of productivity. At the same time, there would be a developer and a team which thinks about, okay, look, by going to a dynamic language, am I actually compromising on, say, code safety, structure of the code? That's where the C, C++, Java world used to say, look, I don't want to go into this dynamic world as of now. I'm still comfortable with the processes that I have. Then take a look at the team part. It depends a lot on the team. In fact, team is the most important thing. The culture in the team, the team's familiarity with tools, all these things matter. Look at the tool with respect to the cost. Is it a costly tool? Is it a free tool? Is there a lender? Is there something which says, okay, there's a vendor which comes in and says, look, you have to use this tool for such a long period in time, or this is a royalty that I should actually get in. So these are things that you would want to keep yourself, safe from. You would also want to, the project manager or the team would want to measure it based on certain things. Like I measure lines of code is what a team could say. Another team would say I would measure FPs, that is function points. Another team would say I measure use case points. So you got to kind of cater to most of these project teams. So now, keeping this in mind, everyone is free to choose, everyone can choose what they want to choose. There has been an evolution around the tool sets that the teams have been using. Now when I talk about evolution, these are like patterns of how the tools have evolved. Now when I look at it, how many of you have heard of VirtualBox? Okay. What is the good thing about VirtualBox? It provides virtualization. What does it do? On a single machine, a 4 GB laptop like this, you can run 2 machines. Same hardware, right? You could actually spin up something which is there. Now look at something like Chef, Puppet. Anybody is aware of what Chef and Puppet is? Okay. Chef and Puppet are automation tools. So for example, when I use VirtualBox, what I'm doing is I'm actually creating one machine on my laptop and I'm actually bringing up another machine. Now using a tool like Chef and Puppet, what you could do is you could kind of automate it. You could automate the entire process. But now imagine doing this for like 100 people, doing it for like X number of people. That's where a tool like Vagrant would actually kick in. A tool like Vagrant simplifies this process. It makes your life a lot easier. I don't have to again reconfigure the environment, set up another development environment for another person. Imagine you're in a team which has got these are things which really come and tell you, what is the specific area of tooling that these tools address. Now if I look at a plugin that I build on, say, an Eclipse IDE, one of the major advantages that I get is I know Eclipse is capable of code generation to a certain extent. I know Eclipse is able to give me a wonderful feature of a quick fix. So a person who is extremely comfortable with an IDE is able to generate code with lesser number of errors at a much more faster pace. Now let me just put this together and I'll just look at certain specific cases when I actually say the tools have evolved. Take a look at build tools. You got Maven, Ant, Make. These are some kind of build tools. These tools are good and they serve a specific kind of purpose. But moving forward, you will find there are better tools which are again coming up. There are tools like Gradle, which kind of automates the way in which you would actually configure even your build process. Okay. The other thing which Gradle gives you is here, if I have a tool like Maven, which is strictly driven by a POM object, which is what I call as a project object model, whereas something which is as flexible as Ant, wherein it talks about, I can actually give, setting up a build process is so easy. So what it does is, a tool like Gradle will kind of simplify the entire process. It makes it flexible, it makes it easy, it makes it extremely quick. We'll actually talk about some of these things in terms of a scenario. So let's take a look at a typical scenario in terms of infrastructure. This is where we were, if you look at the version control tools, I have version control tools like CVS, I got version control tools like SVN, I got version control tools like JIT. How many of you used a version control tool? Okay. Which tools have you used? Okay. How many of you use JIT? Okay, we got few takers for JIT also. See, now the advantage that JIT brings in compared to CVS and SVN is the ease of getting onto it. The speed at which somebody can get onto a JIT is much more. For me to sit on a local machine and have version control set up itself was, something like it's a 2-minute job. Previously, if you look at something like a version control tool, the first thing that the person would ask, where is the server? Get me a server, get me a repository, get me things around it, I need expertise. JIT changed the entire thing. JIT makes your expertise, your level of getting onto the tool, it actually simplifies it. Now that you have JIT, people have made a tool on top of it. So if you take a look at something like a JIT hub, that is a perfect case of how the tool, as simple as JIT, has got morphed into a proper solution where anyone can actually start getting onto a version control mechanism without worrying too much about the nuances of actually setting up the server, setting up the version control mechanism. So what I would suggest is, like if somebody wants to get into an open source forum and start practicing their programming, if I would call it that way, the first way to enter into it is actually starting registering yourself into GitHub. You can register yourself into GitHub, create your own projects, start playing around with it. So that is like, it kind of gets you on board, it gets you in a world where you can now start experiencing the true powers of a version control mechanism. Similarly, if you go to VirtualBox, VirtualBox is a nice tool. It brings about the possibility of having another environment, but when I get onto Vagrant or a tool like that, it is nothing but virtualization for the masses. You and me can just go in, get started. I don't need any huge investment to actually get started in standardizing my development environment. So what I'm trying to say is, this is virtualization which is available for a 2-member team, it is available for a 300-member team. So the pace at which you could actually get onto this is what determines why these tools are better than the rest of them. Now let's take a look at something like the build space. I was talking about different spaces, right, in the tooling area. One is infrastructure, the other one is the automation part. If you look at the automation part, people are aware of Make. How many of you are aware of Make? Right, Make is like been there for ages. It's the tool which actually defined what automation in build was. Then when you moved from Make, you had something which came up, which was the Apache Ant. What did Ant do? Ant said, look, let me come with XML files, let me have more control, let me start doing things in a different way. So that's where the Ant evolved. Once Ant came in, then you got into Apache Maven. What is Apache Maven good for? Apache Maven brought the idea of reuse. I don't want to actually take my libraries around. All my libraries, you build it once, all will be available in your repository. You talk about a repository, the repository is available. You just point to the repository, be anywhere in the world, you can always point to the repository, start getting in. So it increases the developer productivity. At the same time, it improves the pace at which you can actually start doing your development. Now, I have got availability, I got access to assets, I got access to these repositories. Now the next thing that you're looking at is something like Jenkins. Jenkins is something which brings in continuous integration. So if I want to automate my build, I want it to be done at a frequency, I want it to be done fast, I want it to be done extremely, it has to happen in that kind of a pace where I would want my team to make substantial progress, not in a day's work, within minutes. That's when I get into the continuous integration space. And from there, you move into something which is evolved and which is much more refined, and you call it as Gradle today. It's Gradle. The Gradle, when I talk about Gradle, what comes to your mind is, I have seen a world where Makefile was like very, very textual. I had to actually type in everything. Then I get into something like Ant, which came with XML. I got into a repository which was defined by a model, which was like POM. The POM files were used to actually define the model in case of Apache Maven. But when it comes to Gradle, it breaks away that dependency also. Now it gives me the best of both the worlds. In case of Ant, I had the flexibility that I did very little rituals. I just wrote the XML file and I'm ready. I can actually make a build for my project. But when I came to Maven, what happened was, because of the entire POM model which was there, it was becoming more and more, I had to do much more. So this is where a tool like Gradle came in, which built on top of Groovy, and it's got an excellent ability to actually build custom models for huge enterprises. So if I'm talking about me making my own tool and my own build mechanism, Gradle allows you to customize it with any of your, if it is like a simple, AND file that you would actually make, exactly like that you can actually do it with Gradle. So having said that, I would like to go into the IDE space now. I mean, I just covered the automation and I'm just getting into the IDE space. The IDE space, if you look at it right at the bottom, what I talked about was the TextPad and the Vims and all these tools. There are lots of people on these tools. People like it just because of the simplicity, the dexterity, the comfort and the familiarity that they have with these tools. Now if I want to move from these tools to something like Eclipse, which is what I'm actually putting out here. So if you look at Eclipse, Eclipse gives me things like, the most beautiful thing in Eclipse that I would say is the control 1 feature, which is the quick fix. If I'm coding and I'm actually practicing a test driven development, I would prefer to have an IDE which is actually going to keep me a safe person to work with. So which is where you come into an IDE of something like Eclipse, and then there are people who started building on top of IDEs like Eclipse and started integrating lots of other tools. Like you could actually do forward engineering, that is you could start generating code. You could not only do that, you could also build a website with all the components that you would ever think about within matter of minutes. That's what a GGTS or the Grails IDE promises you to do. So if I'm a Java person and I've been doing Java all along, and I suddenly see that, look, this is what it takes to do the development, but I want to do it in a fast forward way, that is where you get on to these IDEs. Now there are other things that people are also trying out. They are trying about making an ecosystem which kind of allows you to plug in tools onto an IDE platform. So I have got a platform and I want to start plugging in more and more tools onto it. So that is where the Eclipse level would actually come in. Similarly, Orion is another project where you would actually see where the focus is more about getting development environments onto the web. So can I actually start providing people with a development environment right off the web? All you need is an internet connection and you just get started. So this is somewhat into the IDE space that I'm actually talking through. Now IDEs today, this is like the de facto about it. IDEs today, they support specific languages. When I say specific languages, I don't say that they're restricted to 1 or 2 languages. What I'm trying to say is that they're built for specific languages. They could be built for multiple languages like Java, C++, C#, and you would actually name it. They would support embedded engineering tools. That is, I can have a code review tool embedded into my IDE. I could have a build automation tool embedded into my IDE. I could have extended collaboration. That is, I sit somewhere and I can start working with somebody else on my team. They would support DSL. Today all this thing is happening. Okay, so moving forward, some of the trends by looking at the tools that we get is, we would get IDEs which can be extended at will and which can scale. So when I say extend at will is, I feel I'm going to build a new language of my choice. Today, coming with a new language is hardly anything. I'm finding people writing new languages like, on Java itself, on the Java when I say, along with Java, on the JVM itself, you got another 200 odd languages. If you look at it, it's not just Java alone. On the JVM, you have so many languages. So the fact is that the programmers are now comfortable with working with multiple languages. It's no longer the case that, I'm a Java person, I'm going to remain a Java person. You got to be in a world where you would have access, ability to work on, at the same time you would have to thrive on multiple languages. That's where you're going to have a new kind of programmer who is a polyglot, who can actually work on multiple languages and is equally comfortable in most of them. Then the other thing is, we want to collaborate, and at the same time we need to have the choice to fence it. When I say we want to collaborate and fence, what I mean is, if I got 3 project teams, I need to know what I can actually share safely between the teams. I need to know what I cannot share. So this is exactly what would be required. And an open source development platform, a development platform which allows people to actually scale, add more tools, add more functionality at will. Now if you look at the software engineering tools today, it's more than anything else. I'll tell you, the most important thing is the ease of getting somebody onto the tool. if I find the tool is not in line with the things that I have been using all along, I will find it very difficult to get onto the tool. It is that entry barrier which the tool has to actually break when we actually look at it. Like for example, if I have been using Eclipse IDE, using any flavor of the Eclipse IDE would be easier for me. If you have a team of 5 people who have got like 3 different IDEs, you have a problem. So those are some of the things which are there. So there are tools which are coming around which are like easy for people to get on board. There are tools which are there which are like extremely good in terms of, you have 3 lines, you just have 3 lines of code which generates the rest of the framework for you, which is where I was talking about the GGTS previously. Then obviously cost is a very good important factor, because the other thing is support. Yes, definitely people would want to have support. You have support or you have a team which can support you. You don't necessarily purchase support always. You can even have a team which is there which can support you. Okay, so this is with respect to today. Tomorrow what we are looking at is we are looking at smart tools. I am not going to the word intelligent, I am just saying smart. The reason why I am saying smart tools is because the tools can be easily integrated, the tools can be brought together, the tools can be put together in such a way that they would actually satisfy a coherent objective. A coherent objective, what I mean is, if I am going to do a web application, all the components required for a web application would actually come on to the specific platform of my choice. So in one of the clear-cut moves in case of SpringSource that I would say is, they have moved, they had 2 flavors. They had STS and they had some Groovy plugins which used to come in. They have recognized that people would want to see tools which are like specific for the job that they're doing. So they have actually split it open and they made it open source. Both the platforms, they have now STS and they have GGTS, which is the one for Groovy and Grails. Similarly, we would like to have an interface which is like standardized. So if there's, it's exactly the same thing that I was saying. Like if I have people who have worked on Eclipse as a platform, I would want them to have another set of tools which are built on Eclipse so that they're easy for others to understand. Tools learning from developer behavior. How many of you have seen, can I share the usage reports, on most of the tools that you've actually used? This is exactly one of the, do you want this information to be shown to the end user? Like, do you want to do A, B or C? Like, do you want to build a web application? Do you want to build this using a particular framework? And these are the options which are available. So that's something that I would say, learn from the developer's behavior, learn from the organization level reuse. When I say organizational level reuse is, I have built a component, I am able to actually take the component, something like how I would do in Maven. I take the component, I make it an artifact, I publish it into my Maven repository, and while I am working from my Maven repository, it tells me, look, this developer in this project has done this kind of development. Do you think this actually satisfies your requirement? If there is a tool which actually gives me that kind of a functionality, it is going to save me lots of time, right? So this is what it is. And the other thing is, open source is a way forward to actually making tools, because it allows you to actually have trained people ready. Like if you ask me today, all the big IT companies in India, we recruit lots of people from campuses. Campus is a place where you can actually get lots of talent. Now, what is this talent going to be skilled on? The talent can be made skilled effectively on open source tools. You can nurture them, you can build them, you can give them the tools of choice, and then you have a ready supply of people who can actually work on these open source platforms. So having tools which are already built on open source platforms and people within the colleges and communities who already worked and experienced on development environments which are already open are the way, are the future, typically. That's what's going to change the way you actually develop software, the way you actually progress with it. Okay, and project management tools, this is another area which is like, it's like something which is very, very specific to the organization. You can have organizations which would want to have huge exhaustive, project management tools. You could have customers who would come up with requirements of saying, this is my project management tool. You would find people who say, okay, look, I don't like this project management tool, this is actually getting into what I'm trying to do. But you need tools tomorrow which allow you to follow your style of development, at the same time give you a coherent way to actually express your status, tell that this is where you are, tell what you've actually finished. So which is where you would very quickly move on to something like a group of people working on a particular kind of technology. The technology comes in, there's a change in technology, then suddenly you want to get all your requirements which are there in the previous thing, translate it into something completely new, get it in, reduce the time it takes to actually rebuild it on something else. Reuse requirements. I'm talking about reusing of requirements, I'm talking about in terms of getting a visibility of what is happening in multiple projects at the same time. So these are all possible with the next generation tools that we would actually talk through. The other thing is software factories. Now when I talk about software factories, it's a reality. I mean, if you look at the number of people that we have building software, if we want to actually look at it with respect to the craftsman versus the production kind of a mode, where I would say if you can have tools which are like extremely good, which are flexible, which can be easily mastered, software factories are definitely a reality. We have tried it multiple number of times, but with varied degrees of successes, but software factories are something that we see would happen, and that's where we would say, okay, look, let's move towards tools which are like open source. So let me summarize very quickly. What I would say is the next generation productivity tools of some of the things that we actually saw, they would definitely be smart, they would be adaptive, they would be scalable, and they would have to be built on an open source platform. The very reason why I would say they would have to be built on an open source platform is because you can get it connected with the industry, you can get it connected with the budding talent that is actually coming up, you can have people ready on these tools by the time they're ready to get their first job. So this is the specific reason where I would say open source is the way to go forward in case of software engineering tools, and that's all about from me.